All right, hey guys, third video. So yeah, like I said in the last video, today will just be kind of talking about me, talking about why I started the channel and my website also. It'll be pretty chill and laid back. I have some notes, but I didn't like write a script or anything. Still getting used to YouTube. So, um, but yeah, I have some notes for some stuff that again, just kind of talking about who I am, so you guys can kind of know a little bit more about me, my interests in consciousness, and what that means for me, and yeah, my goals for the channel and kind of what I'm trying to pursue with that. So yeah, I'll just go through the little bullet points that I have here. So I'll start with me. My earliest interests in consciousness, spirituality, kind of began with a guy named Wayne Dyer. He was very big in our family. Everyone read him. Everyone loved him. Everyone talked about him all the time. So, naturally, I was just like, who is this guy? And I started reading his stuff. And he's like a spiritual self-help guru type. Yeah, my family was very, very big into reading his stuff, listening to his CDs and audiobooks and all that, back when CDs were a thing. I'm not that old, but, we don't really use those anymore, I feel like. But yeah, Wayne Dyer, he was definitely my first introduction to spirituality. A lot of it is very new agey. Has a very, self-help tone to it. I think he is maybe one of the better self-help, new age guru type guys. Just in terms of his sincerity. I'm sure he wasn't perfect in a lot of ways. No one is, but I like to think he was one of the better ones, but I might be biased. So, yeah, I started reading his books probably around the time I was like 12, 13. Again, family was big on it, so I got into him as well. And through Wayne Dyer, I started getting into Carl Jung. Carl Jung is for those of you who don't know, he's a very famous Swiss psychologist, one of the early psychologists. He was a student of Freud's, and I like Jung because he harkens back to a time in psychology where, the focus of studying the mind was not simply about statistical values and quantitative analysis to the extent that is viable in psychology. There's a lot of value in that approach to psychology in terms of understanding the mind and all that, but I think Jung really brings something special to the table, in that his accounts of psychology tend to be a lot more narrative, and I think that, to me, they're more meaningful in that way. And for a lot of people as well, there's seems to be a a resurgence in interest in Jung over these past few decades, or however many years you want to say it is. People are rediscovering him a lot, and I think the reason for that is he breathes a lot of life into the subject. To him, it's not just, what are these numbers that we have from these experiments? What are the empirical outcomes of, the data and whatever analysis we ran. Those things are important. Again, I'm not saying that there's nothing to that empirical, quantitative method of approaching psychology, especially when you start to get into neuroscience and the more hard sciences, so to speak, right? But I do think that there is an element of humanity missing when we only look at data, when we only look at numbers, when we only look at statistics. And I think that Carl Jung does he's like no other. He does an excellent job of really calling us to look at our own humanity when we understand and try to relate to our own minds, instead of looking at this purely medical, purely scientific, rationalist approach to the mind. So I liked him a lot. And he is also, don't get me wrong, he's also a very quantitative, empirical guy in his own research. He doesn't, forswear science, or he doesn't make science out to be something that's totally useless and say that, this is BS. He integrates both. And by both, I mean science on the one hand, and on the other, philosophy, but more so religion. And I think that's kind of where Wayne Dyer got me into Jung, and why I resonated a lot more with Jung than I did with other psychologists, even though I didn't know all that many at the time, is because Jung really goes... Jung is willing to explore the mind in terms that we don't ordinarily think of, especially, back in the heyday of this explosion of thinking about the mind in very medicalized terms, very, again, scientific terms. Jung says, hey, let's look at religion and see what religion has to tell us about the structure of our own psyches. Let's look at spiritual traditions and see what that has to tell us about, what we value as human beings. Let's look at different trends across mythology and across spiritual traditions of the world, and see what parallels there are there that we can find to really understand what is the nature of our own minds. And I really love that about Jung, and I still love that about Jung. So yeah, I started reading Carl Jung maybe towards the beginning of high school. Just started picking up some of his books, nothing crazy, just, reading a bit here and there for interest. And around the same time, I also discovered Alan Watts through, I wrote down, early 2010s chill step remixes all throughout high school. Yeah. And yeah, that's pretty accurate, I think. I would say Alan Watts is probably the single most important figure in terms of me developing my interest in studying, investigating consciousness, and all that it entails, and kind of my own worldview when it comes to approaching consciousness. I don't agree with Alan Watts on a lot of things these days. I think that he has a lot of intellectual, philosophical biases, a lot of cultural biases that, I would argue don't allow him to see specifically, I guess broadly, Asian religion, Asian philosophy, Western religion. There's a lot of, subtle but important biases that he brings to the table, as do all people. But while I don't necessarily agree with everything that he says, again, these days, he's fun to listen to. I mean, I would just listen to him for hours and hours and hours back in high school. and, just looking up on YouTube, Alan Watts Chill Step Mix 2014, Alan Watts Chill Step, whatever I could find. And it was very meaningful for me. It gave me a sense of wonder and awe, when I would hear him talking about the mysteries of life and existence, and just how he put it together is so beautiful in a lot of ways. And I think that's what kind of garnered my interest the most in studying the mind, spirituality, psychology, science, to a certain extent, is just how much fun I had listening to Alan Watts when I was a teenager. And yeah, I had my phase when I thought Alan Watts is Jesus, basically, because I'm hearing him talk about the fabric and structure of reality itself, and then I have all this cosmic EDM playing in my headphones super loud, like 4 hours a day, or whatever it was. And yeah, he really turned me on to this whole studying spirituality, studying the mind. What does it mean to be a conscious human being? What does it mean to exist? All these philosophical, metaphysical questions. He really brought them to the forefront of my attention. And that would last, throughout high school. So probably 14 into college, really. I was just so fascinated. And yeah, the last thing that I'll say about Alan Watts, I think I mentioned it already, is that I think the biggest thing that he left me with was a sense of wonder. I mean, true wonder and awe at the existence of our own minds and our own consciousness and our existence as human beings, in this universe, and all of the mysteries and paradoxes and adventures that exist when we start to explore this stuff. And I don't just mean that in an intellectual sense. I mean that there are true adventures to be had in this life, and I can't say that I would have felt that way if it weren't for Alan Watts. And I'm sure a lot of other people, I mean, he's pretty famous by now. I think even if you don't listen to him, you probably know who he is or have heard of him. And yeah, he's probably one of the most important figures who really brought my thinking to where it is, or at least led me in the direction that I'm going now. So shout out to Alan Watts. He's pretty cool. And next I wrote down, and this is kind of like late high school, early college, something like that. Discovered Terence McKenna early on in college through seeing enough Alan Watts videos on YouTube. Yeah, that sounds accurate. If you watch enough Alan Watts, you're gonna get tons of like Terence McKenna recommendations to watch too. And it's great because they're both really fun to listen to. They're both really fun to think about their ideas. And the last thing that I'll say about Alan Watts, and this applies to Terence McKenna as well, is they don't take themselves too seriously. They don't say, this is it. This thing that I'm talking about, this is the answer to life. This is the answer to all the mysteries of space and time and consciousness and whatever. No, they offer ideas. I'm sure they believe a lot of them. And they're willing to accept that, yeah, I don't even know half of the answers to all this stuff. But the depth that they explore it with, and the depth with which they're willing to talk about it. It's inspiring. It's truly, life-changing in a lot of ways. And Terrence, so Alan Watts, to just kind of summarize, is very focused on Asian religion, Asian philosophy, a lot of spirituality, even in like Western religion and spirituality. Jesus, my hands are so cold. It's like, sorry, if you can't, it's like ice all over my car. Yeah, I'm here in Oregon, but climate change. It doesn't usually snow here, but yeah, that's climate change for you. All right, where was I? Yeah, so Terence McKenna, so that's Alan Watts, spirituality, Eastern Western religion. He's more interested in Asian religion, and he talked about it more. But Terence McKenna, on the other hand, focuses. His whole thing is psychedelics, plant medicines, shamanism, and Alan Watts talks a little bit about that stuff too, but not nearly to the same degree as Terence McKenna. And it's kind of funny because, all right, I'm gonna turn the car on if I can because it is so damn cold in here. All right, I'm gonna keep talking though. It's kind of funny because Terence McKenna, if you hear him talk, he tends to write off religion quite a lot. Might have to step on the gas. Damn it. All right. Sorry, it's just really cold. Ah, fuck it. Alright, there we go. Cool. Now I have heat. I drive a Prius, so the controls are kind of stupid sometimes. Alright. Oh, this is gonna be loud. Alright. I'll talk loudly until it gets warm and then I'll turn it off. Yeah, Terence McKenna kind of writes off religion a lot. I can understand why and sympathize with why. He's very adamantly against, organized religion. If you want to think for yourself, which is, a huge message that he has, and I appreciate that. Simply abiding by religious doctrine and dogma that have been, set forth for you by, thousands of years of authority figures, essentially. It's not going to get you very far. At the same time, so I agree with that view that Terence McKenna sets forth. At the same time, there's a lot to be gleaned from religion. One, in the Jungian sense of comparative religion, where it's like, let's look at all these different religious traditions, all these different mythologies, all these different, religious ontologies. And that just basically means, what you think about the nature of being of, in this case, the world. Is it just matter? Is it matter and consciousness? Is it spirit? Is it, a combination of all of them? That's kind of what ontology gets at, with whatever it is that you're talking about. And usually it's like existence, reality, that kind of stuff, as far as I know. But yeah, so there's the Jungian sense, right, of let's see what the structure of our own minds looks like through comparing all these different religions. But I think there's a lot of good stuff in religion too. When you're willing to not take it so seriously, again, in that spirit of not taking things too seriously that Alan Watts and Terence McKenna bring to the table, right? And yeah, I'll leave it at that for those two guys. I could go on for a long time, but I don't want to make this video unbearably long, so I'll just kind of cut myself off there. In terms of people who made me interested in consciousness at a earlier age, kind of childhood through adolescence, I guess. So yeah, McKenna, and I'll come back to McKenna a lot in the future, so that's why I don't feel like I need to explain so much. But the last thing that I'll say about McKenna is the exact same thing that I said about Alan Watts. He has instilled such a sense of beauty and wonder of the mystery of consciousness, of our own minds, that I just couldn't in a million years shake. I mean, I went through my own phase of thinking Terence McKenna was Jesus for a little while there, I'm sure, even though I wouldn't have said it like that. Just because he was so influential. I mean, he is so influential and so impactful in my life. But the biggest thing that he's left me with is this desire and curiosity to explore and discover the nature of my own mind and of our collective human mind, whatever that means, and to go forward and make it an adventure. And again, I might just be reciting him here, but I don't mean that in just a nice sounding metaphorical sense. I mean, there are truly adventures to be had when we are willing to look at the nature of our own minds with true, genuine, deeply rooted, sincere curiosity. I mean, it's an adventure that will last our entire lives, right? So I'll leave it there for Terence McKenna. But he's a very important person to me, and yeah, I love him and Alan Watts a lot. They're very special to me. Okay, so that's 12 years old through like 18, 19-ish. So yeah, that's kind of like my main personal interest. There are other people as well. There's a lot of other important people as well, but I'd say those were the defining early figures, in my life when it comes to being interested in the mind, consciousness, reality, all the stuff that we're talking about, all the good stuff. So yeah, I'll talk about school for a little bit. Kind of since I explained all that, the rest shouldn't be pretty quick to get through. So, I studied, so I'll go back to high school for just a second, I guess. I was really obsessed with Breaking Bad, when I was like 14, 15, whenever it, finished. And yeah, I based my like entire personality off of Breaking Bad, which looking back was just super cringy, and I don't know why I did that, but it's high school, so don't judge me too much, please. But yeah, based on Walter White, I guess, I decided that I wanted to become a chemical engineer. And yeah, that was maybe my sophomore year of high school. And that dream died pretty quickly once I got to college, for the very simple reason that I suck at math and I'm really bad at science. So, yeah, I got like a C average and like whatever the lowest, like algebra or something like that, college algebra or whatever it's called, like algebra 1 probably. Chemistry, same thing. I'm pretty sure I got like a D in like chemistry 101 or whatever it was. So yeah, that wasn't in the cards for me. And it's, yeah, that's the long and the short of it. I was not good enough to do the thing that I said that I wanted to do, and yeah. At the same time, I don't think that it's, I mean, I'm glad that it turned out that way. You know, I could have, well, no, I won't say that because I don't know if I actually could have passed all those classes, but I probably couldn't have, honestly. But there's no way that I would have found the same sense of wonder and awe in chemical engineering as I do every day, thinking about this stuff, writing about this stuff, now making videos about this stuff. I'm sure there are people who do find, you know, immense satisfaction and are extremely curious about chemical engineering and, you know, the hard maths and sciences and all that, but that's just not me. And it was kind of a rude awakening call, but it was an important one because it, you know, it's kind of like life was like, all right, bro, like you're going this way. Like, what are you doing? So let's bring it back here, and then boom, now you're happier. And I was happier. I, you know, switched over to studying psychology, and it was, I take a lot of issue with psychology kind of as a field, as an enterprise. I don't think it's entirely meaningless or fruitless, not by any means, but there's a lot of issues with it, and I'll go more in depth with that in future videos. But yeah, it was definitely a better fit for me than, you know, failing or coming close to failing like the easiest chemistry and math classes at my school. So yeah, and it was interesting. It was genuinely interesting. So again, early interest in Carl Jung. I also had a great AP psychology teacher in high school, Mr. Parsons. He was just the best, honestly. Like he made learning so freaking fun and just so, yeah, he was the guy. He was probably like one of the top 3 best teachers I've ever had in my life. He might have been the best teacher I ever had, honestly. And you know, for that reason, it wasn't hard for me to say like, all right, let me choose this other thing that I know I enjoy learning about, because this guy made it so fun for me to learn about it and to appreciate it. And yeah, so that was yeah, that's how I got into my bachelor's for psychology. Next, well, I guess I'll get a little bit personal here. Not super personal, but just, you know, whatever is relevant. About halfway through college, and you know, I would say before, it's not like it just happened in a vacuum. I made a lot of really bad decisions. I made a lot of really bad choices. I did have a lot of mental health concerns. But I mean, even then, my views on mental health are a bit nuanced, and I keep saying this, but I'll explore that in a later video, with more focus. But yeah, I made a lot of really bad, dumb choices in college, and you know, I hurt other people through those choices. I put other people at a disadvantage because of those choices. And I also ended up impacting my own life in a really terrible way, through the choices that I made. Now, you know, I don't want to say that, I'm broken or something like that, because that's not how I feel at all. But I do feel the need to acknowledge that, because that period of my life was such um, a turning point for me. And I lost a lot of things. Probably be better to say I pushed away a lot of things. Um, and I just let myself sink into the darkness for probably a year, honestly, maybe probably a little bit more than that. I became extremely depressed, extremely unmotivated. Not that, like, I hate this like compulsion that we have in the like our highly corporatized world of like, oh, you always got to be doing something, you always got to be making it, like, no, do what you enjoy. You're a human being. Yeah. I'll give you a little anti-capitalist rant later on, but yeah, I totally lost motivation just to do the things that I needed to do. I had to drop out of school that year because I wasn't going to class. My grades were horrible. I wasn't doing my homework. I wasn't doing anything. I was just so utterly depressed and distraught, and it was bad. It was really, really bad. I'll just, I'll leave it there, but yeah, it was a period of darkness in my life without precedent. Until that point, that was the worst period of my life ever. And yeah, so I dropped out of school. I had to withdraw from all my classes. That didn't look good on my record, which is important for next part here. But because of that, I had a lot of time on my hands. I had a lot of time to read, a lot of time to watch YouTube, a lot of time to just sit by myself and think. And it was hard because I didn't want to think about anything. I just wanted to, like, disappear into a vacuum. I didn't want to die, but I wasn't that far off. And it was just so miserable, just so utterly miserable. And it's important, and that period of my life was important because it really gave me the impetus to really start doubling down on all this stuff. It wasn't just a matter of, oh, this cool idea about consciousness, oh, this cool idea about the mind. That's totally legitimate and necessary to have curiosity for curiosity for curiosity's sake when it comes to exploring this kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's like, dude, you have to get your life together. And again, it's not because you all of your value lies in how marketable you are and how much work you can do and how productive you are and blah blah blah. No, you're suffering. You're suffering. And I knew that there were things that I had to do. I didn't know what those things were. And that the way I was living my life, I just couldn't continue to live like that. I would have just, lived in my parents' basement for years and years and years and just never done anything and just get drunk every day and uh, it, it wasn't a life that, it just wasn't an option. It wasn't an option anymore. And somehow I had just enough energy to start watching videos on philosophy, Nietzsche specifically, and videos on other philosophers, and start getting into religion again. And I became very interested in Buddhism, more so for aesthetic reasons, honestly. I think that's the reason most Western people get into Buddhism, is because the art's so beautiful, and, you know, Buddhist poetry and sculpture and all this stuff. Sorry. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging that in any way. But again, it was kind of this, all right, that's cool, but I really need to get out of this deep, dark, icy black hole that I'm in. And Buddhism was the shining light at the end of the tunnel. I'm sure that's how people feel when they convert to like Christianity or something like that. And I would later go on to formally accept the Buddhist precepts, which is essentially converting to Buddhism. I have different views on that now as well, but it was my hope for the future, and it was beautiful. You know, not just Buddhist art, not just Buddhist poetry, but all these ideas that they were talking about. You know, what it means to live a good life, what it means to have a connection with the divine, what it means to exist in this world as a human being, and just how it goes about that, or I guess how it happened historically to, you know, produce such beautiful, breathtaking, philosophical, and spiritual literature. And you know, so yeah, it really saved me in a lot of ways. I'd still make many more mistakes in the future to come. I still am. I don't think I believe in such a thing as ultimate perfection, or, you know, ultimate enlightenment. And if there is such a thing, I think there's a lot of substantial caveats to that. But yeah, it was my shining light in a sea of darkness. And it was just amazing to learn about it, and to start learning about it, as Alan Watts would say, not seriously but sincerely. And yeah, I took all of that year off from college. That was maybe like my junior year, and then the next year I came back, and I signed up for a bunch of Buddhism classes at my university, my first semester back at school in like a year. And I was like, you know what, like, I feel right at home here, like, talking about this stuff. I don't know anything. I don't know, like, first of all, I don't speak Chinese, and my teacher, you know, he relies a lot on Chinese translations. He was an extremely, I mean, the epitome of a scholar, of a learned person. And I didn't know what was happening half the time, if I'm being completely honest, but it was beautiful to be in that kind of environment where, you know, we're not just talking about new age spirituality and you know, self-help stuff. That wasn't at all the emphasis of those classes. I mean, and it shouldn't have been, because it's a college lecture, right? It's not a self-help group, which no shame in those either, but it's like there was so much healing that took place simply through approaching it through an academic lens, a purely academic lens. And yeah, we talked about, you know, inevitably philosophical questions about human existence, about our consciousness, about, you know, just the nature of reality, everything. We got into all kinds of discussions like that simply by approaching Buddhism through that academic lens. And it was astoundingly beautiful. And, you know, I look back at those days, and yeah, in many ways, those were the golden years for me. It didn't last too long. I graduated like maybe a year or two later, but man, those were the good times. You know, it wasn't perfect by any means. There were still lots and lots of problems. You know, as is the case with life, but yeah, I'm very, very grateful for that time. So, computer turned off because I'm talking so damn long. Let's see. Yeah, so I added on my bachelor's in religion after that. And sorry, I'm not going to edit this, by the way. If it's really long, it just... Still a newbie, so... And it's also a third review. No one's even going to see this, so... Let's see. So yeah, I decided to get my bachelor's in religion after everything that I just told you about, with a focus on Buddhism. I'm not an expert in Buddhism by any means, but yeah, that's what I spent the majority of that degree studying, was Buddhism. Let's see. Yeah, so that was my bachelor's. Graduated, like 2021 or something like that. And I hope it doesn't come off as me like reading my resume to you, because that's not at all the intention, and I would be disappointed if it felt like that. So I really hope it's not coming off that way. I'm just trying to give you like a timeline of my life, but yeah, so after my bachelor's, you know, it was the same thing with chemical engineering, essentially. But now, you know, because of my grades, you know, I as difficult as that period of my life was, I am ultimately grateful for it. I mean, it was necessary for me to start becoming the person that I am still in the process of becoming now. But yeah, I as a result of that period ended up with a horrible, terrible academic record. And you know, I say horrible, it wasn't quite that bad, but it definitely wasn't good. And due to my grades and my GPA, and you know, the fact that I dropped out for like a year worth of school, as much as I wanted to study clinical psychology, and at that time my huge interest was, Jesus, it's getting cold, sorry. Might turn the car on again soon. What was I saying? yeah, my interest was basically pairing clinical psychology, psychotherapy with what I learned about Buddhism. That was like my huge thing at the time. And I actually wrote my senior thesis for my religion degree on um, you know, analyzing the parallels between CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and Yogacara Buddhism, and the Abhidharma of uh, the Buddhist edifice, shall we say. And I have my thoughts about that. I'll definitely review that paper in another video, because I don't agree with most of what I wrote at this point, even just a few years later. But yeah, so that kind of gives you like an idea of where I was just in terms of my goals and the things that I wanted to accomplish in life. And yeah, a PhD in clinical psychology was not in the cards. It was just not going to happen. My grades were bad. At the very least, at the most they were mediocre, and I think that's the only reason that I got into graduate school eventually, is because they weren't totally abysmal. And most clinical psychology programs are like most other graduate programs. Like, you need a bare minimum a 3.0 GPA, most likely more than that, most likely a lot more than that. And it just wasn't going to happen. But all right, I'm turning the car back on. Sorry about that. I'll talk loud again. But yeah, that's all right. That's really annoying. Sorry. So thankfully for me, a lot of MSW programs will accept or at least consider you even if you don't have that 3.0 GPA. They do have their own minimum requirements, but it's more like a 2.5, 2.75 sometimes. I think mine was like 2.75-ish, something like that. But yeah, I turn the fan up a little bit more. I was able to get in with my GPA, and took a little gap year in between graduating and starting my graduate program, which I'm currently about halfway through, and to go teach English in Korea and Taiwan. But honestly, I was just trying to travel, and teaching was the best way to do that. And yeah, I loved it, but maybe I'll talk about that in a different video. It's not super relevant right now, but yeah, I had a lot of fun. It was very difficult living, in another country and working there, but man, I had some of the best experiences of my life and met some of the most important people in my life at that time. So yeah, it was very difficult, but I'm utterly grateful for it. So got into my MSW program again. As much as I'd love this to be a enthralling story about, how I overcame adversity and, did exactly what I wanted to do, reality is that I pretty much chose my second choice every step of the way, at least in terms of like career and academics. And that's the long and the short of it. I didn't have the grades to do the thing that I really wanted to do, so I made do with what I had. And honestly, I have to say the same thing. As much as I think I would have enjoyed clinical psychology, I think social work turned out to be so much better. One, because I don't have to be in school so fucking long and keep doing my PhD for like 5-7 years, or however long it's going to take. So that part's good. But also, I just think I wouldn't be studying the things that I would really want to in clinical psychology. Clinical psychology also has a very microscopic lens of, looking at people. Why is my thing not turning on? Okay, there we go. Also has a very micro lens when looking at the mind, the psyche, human behavior, whatever. And that's good. It's important to have different levels of analysis anytime you're looking at anything, really. But especially something as broad as consciousness, right? But I don't think I would have been happy. I think it would have been too medicalized, too scientific. I'd be doing a lot of experiments. I'd be doing a lot of research, and while those things are certainly valuable, I just don't think I would have been happy, honestly. And this degree is hard. It's not easy. I'd say it's definitely more academically. It's definitely less academically challenging than engineering, biology, clinical psychology, whatever. But it's still hard. It still makes you want to pull your hair out and scream at the ceiling sometimes, for sure. But yeah, I'm glad that I chose it. I met a lot of really great people through there, through my program, and yeah, my goal with that, and it would have been this with clinical psychology anyway, but my ultimate goal is to become a psychotherapist and do therapy with people. Maybe open up my own practice. I'm really not sure. People say private practice is the best way to make money, and that would be nice, but we'll see how things turn out. So yeah, right now I'm a master's student going for my LCSW. Going for my MSW, which is the degree, and then after that I'll be trying to get my LCSW, which is your license to actually do therapy on your own. So yeah, that's everything in terms of myself and my interest in consciousness. This video is almost an hour now, so I'll try to fit in what I can. I'm gonna keep it under an hour because this is really long. Again, I know no one's gonna read it or watch it, but yeah, let's see. I'll just end with this last part, and then I think my goals for the channel, I can probably include that in the next video, honestly. It's pretty much the same topic, so yeah. Now I'll read the script a little bit more for the sake of time, and also just so my interest in consciousness. To kind of summarize, this will be the summary, I guess. It is not just interesting, it is the most interesting mystery in all of existence. To me, it is not merely something to be interested in, it is the thing to be interested in. And when I say mystery, I don't mean the kind of mystery that a detective or a really good historian or archaeologist pieces together. Certainly these things exist in the exploration of consciousness. But what I really mean is the living mystery of sentient life itself. The fact that sentient life arose from supposedly inert, lifeless, unconscious stuff. The fact that our entire bodies, brains, and nervous systems are basically made up of lifeless, quote-unquote, matter, and yet somehow we are conscious of our own human existence with feelings and dreams and ideas and goals for the future and memories of the past. And then I'll give one of my favorite quotes by Terence McKenna here to help me summarize. And I think he's talking about mystical experiences, and that's the focus of my channel. a huge focus of my channel. He says, "It's a religious mystery, and that doesn't mean it's an unsolved problem. It means a mystery. And life is only worth living as long as the mysteries continue to inform, transform, and inspire us." And that's kind of what I mean when I say Terence McKenna instilled such an incredible sense of awe and wonder. I mean, there's no other like him. He's not right about everything, but I think that whether or not he's correct about the ontological nature of reality or of our minds or consciousness, or in whatever means he goes about doing that intellectually, I think those things are far less important than the sense of beauty and wonder and awe that he leaves you with through the things that he talks about. So, and I wrote after that, "I simply can't think of anything more interesting and meaningful to pursue in this life. There is nothing in existence that I am more curious about exploring." And yeah, I think that sums it up. I can't think of anything else that I would rather do than this. And to be able to share that with people, with you guys, to me, there's no greater adventure than that. So, I'll end there. Thanks for listening for 57 minutes, apparently. If you're watching this long, I salute you. Thank you for visiting the channel. I promise I'll make these shorter in the future. This is just kind of like very early content so that you can know me and know about me. I like to be transparent where I can, just so that I don't know. There's no point in being all like mysterious. Maybe that's good for some channels, but I don't know. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll put out some great content for you guys soon. All right, take care, guys. Bye.